I unexpectedly came home at noon without telling my husband in advance, and I unexpectedly saw, through the half-closed bedroom door, my husband with Winter, his close friend, on our love seat. I stood frozen when I heard my husband say, between heavy breaths, "I'd rather kiss the dog Daisy than kiss Melissa." Just before I quietly walked away, they noticed, and their faces turned pale. My name is Melissa Ward, 34 years old, a veterinarian and owner of Pine Hill Veterinary Care Clinic in Cambridge, Boston. My life used to revolve around abandoned cats, injured dogs, and the quiet cries of little souls in need of healing. I always thought of myself as lucky. I had a job I loved, a steady husband, and a warm home in Brookline. Until that afternoon, I left work early due to an unusual stomach pain. My stomach twisted, my head a bit dizzy, but all I could think about was getting home, lying down, and maybe having a simple lunch. As I drove closer to home, I furrowed my brows slightly. Franklin's SUV, my husband's, was already parked in the garage. Strange. At this hour, he was usually at the office until at least 3 in the afternoon. But the suspicion passed quickly, replaced by a small joy, the thought of having lunch with him. I smiled, my heart lightened, as if something warm was waiting for me ahead. I opened the door and stepped inside, softly calling his name. No response. In the silence, there was only the ticking of the wall clock and the lingering scent of an unfamiliar perfume in the air. I stepped carefully down the hallway and stopped. A sound. Soft. Broken. The sound of breathing and muffled giggles. My hand trembled as it touched the half-closed bedroom door. And then, everything inside me collapsed. Franklin, my husband, was with Winter, his best friend, on the love seat in our bedroom. Winter, who once brought in a cat with pneumonia to my clinic, whom I had once considered a friend, was there, on the same seat where my husband and I used to share sweet evenings together. I froze. I couldn't scream. I couldn't cry. I could only hear Franklin's voice, low and breathy. "I'd rather kiss the dog Daisy than kiss Melissa." Daisy, the dog I rescued from a garbage dump when she was close to death. That sentence pierced through me like a blade. 8 years of memories shattered like a glass thrown onto stone. I recalled the past few weeks, how he kept avoiding me, claiming to be tired, blaming work, even sleeping alone in the study. Now, everything made sense. As I stepped back, my foot accidentally hit the corner of the wooden table. The sound made Franklin turn. Our eyes met. He froze. His face turned pale, his mouth opening as if to say something, but I couldn't hear anything anymore. I turned away and walked out before he could stop me. I rushed down the stairs, opened the door, and drove off, though my hands were shaking so hard I could barely control the steering wheel. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I had to get away as far as possible. The Boston wind was so cold it stung my eyes, but I still didn't cry. I forced the tears back, as if letting them fall would make me crumble completely. My phone rang incessantly. I looked at the screen. Franklin calling, then Winter. I didn't answer, but they left voicemails. Franklin's voice pleading, "Melissa, please let me explain. You misunderstood. It wasn't as serious as it looked. I was just too drunk. A big client canceled the contract today, and I had too much to drink." Winter was just comforting me. Then came Winter's voice, choked and broken. "Melissa, please listen. I never meant to betray you. I was only there because Franklin was upset. I didn't know things would go that far. It's not love, just a moment of weakness." I turned on the speaker, listening in silence. Their voices echoed between the howling wind outside the car and the distant horns of Boston traffic. Every word they said sounded like a bad play, full of lies and fear. They wanted me to believe that betrayal was just an accident, an unserious one. I didn't respond. I just gripped the steering wheel tighter, and finally, the tears came, mixing with the rain that had begun to tap on the car windows. I drove to the park by the Charles River, where we had once celebrated our 3rd wedding anniversary. I sat on the cold stone bench, stared at the misty water, and realized I had lost not just a husband, but also the most beautiful part of my trust. An elderly woman walked by with a white-haired dog, paused, and looked at me with gentle eyes. "Are you all right?" she asked. I nodded faintly. She smiled. "Don't cry for someone who doesn't value your love." That sentence felt like a touch to my heart. I nodded again, a faint smile forming, but inside, a decision had already been made. That night, I rented a small hotel room in Back Bay. The room looked out onto Beacon Street, the yellow lights reflecting off the windows. I sat there, silent for hours, staring at my own reflection, tired, in pain, but no longer wanting to run. I opened my notebook and wrote the first lines. Day 1, reclaiming control. And below that, a short list. Meet lawyer, hire private investigator, collect evidence, protect assets, protect myself. As I put the pen down, I knew my life had just taken a completely different turn, and this time, I would be the one rewriting the whole story. 3 days after I left home, I was still staying at the small hotel in Back Bay. Every morning, I woke up early, opened the window to watch Boston's crowds heading to work, and felt like a ghost. No longer a wife, no longer a friend, just a name adrift in chaos. Franklin still called. Every day. His messages overflowed with apologies, promises, and hollow lines like, "I can't live without you." I read them and felt nothing. Winter had vanished completely from social media, but I knew that kind of silence. It wasn't shame, it was calculation. And I needed truth, not guilt. That morning, I received a strange text from Nathan Collins, Winter's husband. Just one line. "I think we should talk. I have something you need to know." That one sentence made my heart sink. Nathan, the quiet, gentle man who always accompanied Winter to couple events. I still remembered his eyes during last year's Christmas dinner, eyes that knew something but chose silence. I called him back. His voice was low, tired. "Can we meet?" At Riverbean, Harvard Square. As soon as possible, the small cafe was tucked under a row of old brick walls, the scent of espresso mingling with the smell of baked cinnamon. I walked in and saw Nathan seated in the far corner. He looked thinner, the shadows under his eyes deeper, and his coffee cold. As I sat down, he quietly said, "I'm sorry for everything." I hesitated. "You have nothing to be sorry for, Nathan. We're just standing at opposite ends of the same truth." He gave a tired smile. "No, I knew about them before you did." My grip tightened. "What do you mean?" He pulled out an old phone and showed me a folder full of messages, conversations between Winter and Franklin going back nearly 6 months. This wasn't a fleeting mistake. It was deliberate, sustained, filled with coded language, rendezvous, and planning. He said, "They deceived us both." But that's not the worst part. I discovered a plan, one that chilled me. He opened a tablet, displaying screenshots of emails from Winter to Franklin. One line stood out. "If she loses credibility, we can buy the clinic. Call Dallas. He knows how to handle the small accident with the VIP client's cat." I read it and felt frozen. Small accident. They were talking about a living being, an innocent creature. I looked at Nathan. He nodded grimly. They were planning to orchestrate the death of a cat belonging to a high-profile client, then spread rumors your clinic was negligent. When your reputation collapsed, Franklin would come in as the rescuer and buy the practice at a low price. Winter would manage the PR. Do you understand? This isn't just betrayal. It's a plan to destroy you. I sat frozen, gripping my coffee cup until my fingers turned white. Faces of the animals I'd saved flashed through my mind, the sleepless nights, the thank you letters hung on the clinic walls. All of it, to them, just a business deal. Nathan looked at me and said slowly, "I didn't come to hurt you. I came because I can't stay silent anymore. Franklin and Winter think they're clever, that you'll collapse and I'll stay weak. But they forgot that the silent ones are the ones watching. I looked at him, my emotions tangled. Anger, sorrow, and a flicker of hope. For the first time in days, I didn't feel alone. I nodded. If you're ready to help, we can turn this around. I don't just want to expose them, I want the truth out. Nathan took a deep breath. I've prepared everything. I have copies of their messages and their financial plan to take the clinic. He handed me a USB drive. When it touched my palm, it felt like holding a fuse. Small, silent, but powerful enough to blow apart every lie. I set down my cup and looked out the window. Rain fell softly on the brick street. I said, my voice calm and cold, I won't let them decide my worth. Thank you, Nathan. From now on, we're no longer just victims. He gave a tired but real smile. Then let's begin. As I stepped out of the cafe, the wind hit hard against my cheek, bitterly cold. But I had found an ally, and stepped into a battle I knew I would win, not through fury, but with precision. Since the meeting at Riverbean, Nathan and I stayed in regular contact. We used encrypted emails and secure apps to share documents. Nathan continued living with Winter, pretending to forgive her, while secretly recording calls and copying emails and texts between her and Franklin. He told me, "She thinks I'm weak. But the more I play the fool, the clearer I see who they really are." I knew he was enduring pain, but we both understood. Silence was a strategy, not surrender. On Monday morning, I decided to meet Lucia Harrington, a lawyer recommended by an old friend. Her office was on the 22nd floor of a glass tower on Boylston Street, overlooking Boston. Lucia came out to greet me, around 45, slender build, silver-streaked hair tied back, her eyes calm but sharp as blades. When I sat down, she placed a black coffee in front of me and said softly, "Ready to talk?" I told her everything. The affair, Nathan's messages, the plan to destroy the clinic's reputation. Lucia didn't interrupt. She simply took notes, nodding occasionally. When I finished, she clasped her hands together and said firmly, "The first thing you need to do is draw your legal lines. I'll help you draft a post-nuptial agreement to protect all your assets and the full ownership of Pine Hill Veterinary Care. If Franklin wants to reconcile, he'll sign. If not, you still win," I sighed. "He won't sign if he knows the real reason." Lucia smiled faintly. "He'll sign. Men like Franklin only trust what they believe they control. You just need to give him that illusion." Then she looked me in the eye. "Melissa, when a man cheats, he's not just taking your trust. He's testing whether you'll fight back. And if you don't, he'll believe you deserved it." I sat in silence. Her words struck deep, not because they hurt, but because they were true. I'd trusted too much, been too gentle. Now I had to use the same intellect I used to heal others, to save myself. Lucia opened another folder and pointed to documents I needed: financial statements, my veterinary license, lease agreements, and tax returns. "We'll move everything temporarily into a personal trust, under your name and an independent trustee. We'll use Massachusetts laws protecting personal businesses in marriage. Think of it as a strategic relocation." I nodded and started taking detailed notes. For the first time in weeks, I felt my breathing steady. No more chaos, no more being pushed into corners. I was writing the rules now. The meeting lasted over an hour. As I stood to leave, Lucia placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Melissa, you heal the voiceless. Now, learn to heal yourself, with reason, not sympathy." Stepping out of the building, the wind from the Charles River blew my hair back. I opened my phone and began recording all incoming calls from Franklin, saving every message to a separate drive and sending a backup to Lucia. I even installed a small recorder in the clinic, in case Winter or anyone tried to interfere. That evening, I opened my laptop and created a folder titled Recovery Plan. Inside were 3 new files: legal documents, evidence, Franklin and Winter, and next steps. I stuck a note on my screen: control. Don't react. At that moment, I understood. To reclaim freedom, I didn't need to scream or retaliate in pain. I just had to let them fall into their own trap. And the first thing I needed was proof. I returned to Pine Hill Veterinary Care on Thursday morning, after nearly a week off, under the pretense of recovering my health. As the glass door swung open, the familiar mix of antiseptic and coffee from the front desk greeted me. Everything looked normal, but I knew, from now on, every corner of this place would be a battleground. Sienna, my assistant, rushed over, her eyes a mix of relief and worry. "Dr. Melissa, I'm so glad you're back. There's something I think you should know." I looked at the young woman, her hands tightly clutching a file. "Tell me, Sienna." She swallowed hard, lowering her voice. "2 days ago, Franklin came to the clinic. He said you were sick and had authorized him to collect a few client contract files. I thought it was odd. He's never gotten involved with the clinic before, but he was confident and he had a printed email with your signature." I remained silent. One word lit up in my mind: forgery. Sienna continued. "I secretly checked the security footage. Here." She opened her laptop and pulled up a video. On screen, Franklin in a long coat and sunglasses, heading straight for the back archive. He discreetly opened a cabinet, pulled out files, took photos with his phone, and quickly slipped them into his bag. As he exited, a woman in a gray coat, unfamiliar, was waiting in the parking lot. She received a small USB from his hand. I stared at the screen, my heart slowing, each beat icy cold. "He didn't just betray me, he's stealing our client's trust." Sienna nodded quietly. I backed up the footage to a separate drive, password protected. "If you want, I can send it to your lawyer." I took her hand and gave it a light squeeze. "Thank you, Sienna. Keep this between us. From now on, anyone asking about me, don't say a word." She nodded, her gaze more resolute. "I understand. I'm on your side that night." As Boston glowed under warm yellow lights, I sat in my small hotel room and replayed Franklin's video frame by frame. The hum of city traffic blended with the steady beat of my heart. No longer chaotic. I placed the USB into an envelope, sealed it, and sent it overnight to Lucia Harrington. With it, a short note. "They've started playing dirty." "I'm ready, around 10 p.m., Lucia called back, her voice as calm as ever. "Good, Melissa. Now you have visual evidence. But don't rush. You don't need to strike first. In law, timing outweighs evidence. Let them confess on their own. That's how you win, not just in court, but in yourself." I listened silently, eyes fixed on the window. The reflection of street lamps shimmered on the glass, revealing a woman staring back, no longer broken, no longer grieving. "Lucia," I said, "I'm not seeking revenge. I just want the truth to do its job." She replied, "And it will, when you're patient enough." I nodded, set the phone down, turned off the lights, and let the faint blue glow of the laptop screen fill the room. In the darkness, I heard the clock ticking, each beat soft yet firm, like the footsteps of justice drawing near. 2 days later, I received a message from Franklin. Just one conversation. "One chance, Melissa." I was wrong. I stared at the screen for a few seconds before typing back. "All right. Oakview, 7 p.m. Oakview, the restaurant where we celebrated our 4th anniversary." That night, he had given me a bouquet of white roses and whispered, "I love the peace in you." Now I chose that very place, to see how much of his so-called peace remained. That evening, Boston lay beneath a soft layer of mist. I wore a simple cream dress, hair neatly pinned, and the same small silver earrings I used to wear on clinic days. When I walked in, I saw Franklin already seated at our old corner table. He looked thinner, scruffy-bearded, shirt wrinkled, yet still forced a smile, as if that could erase everything. "Thank you for coming," he said hoarsely. I gave a small nod. "You said you needed to explain." Franklin sighed, clenching his hands, eyes fixed on the table. I know you saw everything. I won't make excuses. That day, I drank too much. The past month's been hell. Major clients dropped out. My mind's been a mess. Winter came to comfort me, and things got out of hand. I remained silent. My composure clearly unsettled him. I know it was terrible. I regret it every day. We were just friends. I don't love her, Melissa. Not at all. I just felt weak, just wanted someone to listen, just that once. I was wrong, I tilted my head, my voice soft, as if speaking to an anxious patient. And you think a canceled contract gave you the right to destroy 8 years of trust? He lowered his head, voice cracking. I don't know what to say besides, I'm sorry. I just want a second chance. I'll do anything to prove I'm sorry. I paused for a long moment. Then, I pulled a white envelope from my bag and placed it before him. You said anything, right? Franklin looked at me and nodded eagerly. Yes. Anything to fix this marriage. I slid the envelope toward him. Then sign this. A post-nuptial agreement. Lucia, my lawyer, Jers, drafted it. If you truly want to start over, sign it. It's just a way to ensure you won't repeat your mistakes. He looked at me, suspicious. You hired a lawyer? I smiled faintly. You once told me, trust without terms is just fleeting emotion. I'm applying that now. Franklin opened the document, skimmed the first few lines. I knew he wouldn't read closely. That's who he was. Overconfident, dismissive, certain I'd always be soft. He grabbed the pen and signed. Done, he said with a sigh, then reached for my hand. I know you still love me, Melissa. I see it in your eyes. I let his hand rest for a moment, then gently pulled away. Everyone deserves a chance to make things right. He frowned, puzzled. I smiled, stood, collected the document, and slipped it back into my bag. Thanks for signing. Things will be much clearer from now on. I left him sitting there, surrounded by candlelight and the distant sound of a cello. As I stepped out into the sharp Boston wind, I stood on the sidewalk and took a deep breath. In my bag, the freshly signed post-nuptial agreement held a clause that stated any act of deceit, manipulation, or financial misconduct would trigger civil penalties and forfeiture of shared assets. Franklin had just signed his name into a perfect legal trap. And the cruelest irony? His own story of drunken weakness gave me every reason to set it. I turned and walked into the Boston night, a faint smile flickering across my lips. For the first time, I felt no need to retaliate, because I knew the truth stood with me, and he had just signed the beginning of his own downfall. The next morning, I received an envelope from Joseph Hale, the private investigator Lucia had recommended. Inside was a full report on Franklin's past, neatly organized, chilling, and full of fragments I had never known. The first page read, Elaine Ward versus Robert Ward, divorce file, Essex County, 1997. Franklin's father, Robert Ward, had cheated on his wife with a company employee. His mother, Elaine, divorced him when Franklin was 10. Since then, the boy had lived caught between love and resentment. He loathed his father's betrayal, yet grew up to become his mirror image. A brief note from his school psychology report read, emotionally unstable, strong possessive behavior, tendency to replicate paternal patterns. I read, my heart heavy. And then came the lines that left me frozen. At age 18, Franklin had a sexual relationship with Amy, his 16-year-old cousin, resulting in a pregnancy. Her family threatened legal action for statutory rape, but Franklin's mother, Elaine, secretly paid a large settlement, $50,000 at the time, in exchange for silence. 4 years later, during his senior year in college, Franklin had an affair with Michaela, a married professor. The relationship ended only after her husband found out, filed a complaint with the university, and forced Franklin to transfer schools to avoid disciplinary action. I sat still, feeling like I was reading a recycled script, one where every generation of warred men rewrote the same sin, just with new settings. Lucia called, her voice steady. Franklin despised his father, yet he's living out the same life. A child raised in betrayal either fears becoming the betrayer or becomes him, I replied softly, and Franklin chose the second. I closed the file and looked out the window. Morning light filtered through the Boston curtains, casting streaks like boundaries between past and present. Inside, I felt no more rage, only clarity. He hadn't accidentally betrayed me. He was repeating a legacy carved deep into his blood. I texted Lucia. I understand now. I want to know the origin of the other one. She replied, Winter? I think her husband is quietly digging into her past too. I set my phone down and inhaled deeply. A clear thought rose within me. To end this cycle, I couldn't merely punish them. I had to bring the truth to light, so the pattern of pain could stop with me. That afternoon, I met Nathan again at Riverbean. He brought a thin file, quietly saying, I think you should know, not for sympathy, but to understand why she chose that path. Inside were a few old photos of Sylvia Collins, Winter's mother, a nurse at a doctor's clinic who had been in an affair with a married physician for 3 years. When Sylvia became pregnant, the man disappeared, leaving her with an illegitimate child and not a word of remorse. Winter was raised in bitterness, with the only lesson her mother ever passed down. Men only stay with the woman who makes them feel special. I understood. She had learned to love wrongly from a woman who had once loved wrongly too. 2 entries in the file made my blood run cold. In her senior year of high school, Winter had an affair with Jackson, the father of her best friend. The relationship only ended when they were caught in a hotel, discovered by that very friend and her mother. Years later, during her internship, Winter again fell into an affair with Tristan, her married supervisor, which lasted 9 months before his wife found out, and he fired Winter in exchange for forgiveness. I read all this, and my heart sank. Not from hatred, but from the realization. Winter hadn't just ruined someone else's marriage. She was reliving her mother's tragedy, believing that she'd only be seen if she could possess a man who already belonged to someone else. Lucia once said, "Those who hurt others are often the ones who've never been healed." Now I understood. Winter didn't just want to steal my husband. She was trying to reclaim the image of a father she never had, and Franklin, sadly, was the perfect man for that role. I closed the file and told Nathan, "I'm not here to forgive. I just need to end this." He nodded. End the cycle that began with them. With truth. As I left the cafe, the rain had started to fall. Droplets clung to the glass window, like threads of memory, reminding me that healing always begins by looking straight into the root of the wound. That night, I returned to my hotel in Back Bay. The Boston rain still fell, mist-like drops blurring the windowpane with a soft haze. In the small room, lit only by a dim desk lamp, I sat down and opened my notebook. For the first time since everything began, I wrote, not to vent, but to see the story from outside my pain. I drew 2 parallel columns and wrote Franklin's name on the left, Winter's on the right. Beneath each, I jotted brief clinical notes like a psychiatrist annotating trauma. Franklin, feared becoming his father, repeated betrayal. Winter, longed to be seen by her father, pursued married men. I stared at those lines for a long time, as if facing 2 mirrored souls. A man who betrayed because he feared his past, and a woman who stole love to feel loved. Neither of them truly loved anyone. They were both running from childhood wounds, and in their flight, they used me like an obstacle to trample over in order to feel worthy. I closed my eyes and recalled what Lucia had said in our first meeting. Those who hurt others are often the ones who've never been healed. Back then, I thought it was just philosophical comfort. Now it echoed in me like a brutal truth. I had seen it. They were not monsters, only children who grew up in dark houses. now fumbling to relight a candle, even if it meant burning others. I turned to a new page and wrote in firm strokes, "I will not let their past define my present. I will end the cycle, with truth, not hatred." I closed the notebook and set the pen down. In the mirror's reflection, my face no longer looked lost. It held the stillness of someone who had finally seen through the illusions. Outside, the rain fell harder. I stood and drew back the curtains, gazing down at the streetlights. People still walked, cars still passed. Life went on, and I understood. The world never pauses for anyone's pain. But tonight, for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel pain anymore. There was only one thing left to do: bring the truth into the light. 2 weeks later, I sent out invitations for the celebration of my 8th wedding anniversary with Franklin. The invitation was elegant, gold-edged white background, listing the venue. The Grand Ivy Hotel, Boston, 18th floor ballroom. No one knew that this event wasn't a celebration. It was a courtroom of truth I had built myself. Franklin protested violently when he saw the guest list. "Are you insane? Why would you invite Winter and Nathan? You want to turn our anniversary into a farce?" I only smiled and replied gently, "I just thought we should have everyone who's been part of our lives present. I want to start fresh, remember?" He hesitated, then nodded. He thought I had softened. He believed silence from a woman meant forgiveness. He didn't know I was silent because I was listening to the truth approaching. In the days of preparation, Lucia and Sienna came to the hotel to help. We rented a private meeting room next to the ballroom, where Lucia set up a small projection system and reviewed the USB, containing all the evidence. Franklin breaking into the file room, the messages detailing their plan to discredit the clinic, and the recorded conversation between me and Franklin at Oakview. Lucia placed a hand on my shoulder and said calmly, "When the truth is revealed, you don't need to shout. Let it speak for you, Sienna." The once shy assistant had become a pillar of strength. She helped organize the documents, arrange seating, and test every device. At one point, she looked at me, eyes tinged with concern. "Are you sure you're ready to see them in the same room?" I smiled, steady. "I've already seen the worst. Everything from now on is just truth." Meanwhile, Nathan continued his role as the forgiving husband. He messaged Winter, subtly feeding her the illusion that Franklin was leaving me for her. The conversations were archived by Lucia as proof of motive and conspiracy. Nathan told me over the phone, "She believes it now. She thinks Franklin will choose her, and this event is where he'll make it official." I replied quietly, "Let them reveal themselves. When people think they're about to win, they drop their masks." On the final night before the event, I sat in the hotel room, gazing out at the city lights. Boston shimmered, traffic flowing like a constellation of moving stars. I opened the USB again and replayed the videos, the evidence. Each frame was once a blade. But now, it didn't hurt anymore. It only reminded me how far I'd come. At 11 p.m., I closed the laptop and exhaled deeply. Tomorrow, it would all end. Not with tears, but with light. That evening, the Grand Ivy Ballroom glowed with white flowers, golden candles, and soft jazz music. Everyone was dressed to the nines, believing they were attending a wedding anniversary celebration, unaware they were about to witness a courtroom of truth. I entered wearing an ivory gown, long and elegant, its V neckline revealing the silver necklace Franklin had once given me on our first anniversary. The room fell silent as I walked through. Franklin stood near the podium, clinging to a forced smile. Winter, in a navy blue dress, sat in the back row, her eyes flickering between nervousness and confidence, as if she truly believed tonight Franklin would finally claim her. When the MC invited me on stage, I took the microphone and walked slowly under the lights. The music stopped. I raised my glass and spoke with a voice soft but unyielding. "Thank you all for being here. 8 years of marriage is long enough to understand. Some truths can't stay hidden under the spotlight forever." A few chuckled, mistaking it for a poetic opening. But seconds later, the screen behind me lit up. First, a video. Franklin entering the records room, handing off a USB to a stranger. Gasps rippled through the hall. Then the screen shifted to a series of messages. Winter. After the clinic collapses, we'll buy it. You'll be her savior, Franklin. Handle the media. I'll get her to sign. The air turned thick. Guests began inching away from Franklin's table. But I didn't stop. I clicked the remote, voice steady. And here's what they hid for far longer. Not just betrayal of a wife, but betrayal of basic human decency. The screen switched. Franklin Ward, 2008. Age 18. Relationship with underage cousin, resulting in pregnancy. Case settled privately. A stunned murmur swept the room. Then a photo from 2012, captioned, Affair with married professor. Transferred schools after complaint. Franklin's face drained of color. His grip on the wineglass turned his knuckles white. I said nothing, just looked at him. Then the slide changed again. Winter Collins, 2010. High school student, affair with best friend's father, caught in hotel. Another wave of whispers. Final slide. 2017 internship. 9-month affair with married director, ended when exposed. Wife filed for divorce. Now they understood. This wasn't a momentary lapse. It was a pattern, born of wounded psychology. Nathan stepped up calmly. I'm Winter's husband. I'm sorry, but this isn't just personal. This is a pattern of two people who were once betrayed, becoming betrayers themselves. He plugged in another USB, and the screen showed more messages. Winter. She's too soft to suspect. Just pretend a few more months, Franklin. I know how to get her to sign. The ballroom fell silent. Franklin looked down, hands shaking. Winter buried her face in her hands, tears streaking her makeup. Franklin tried to speak. Melissa, I was pulled in, I replied, voice composed, eyes cold but clear. You said you'd rather kiss a dog than kiss me. Well, I'd rather embrace freedom than hold on to a liar. A sharp crash. His glass shattered on the floor, scattering under the lights like shards of the love he once pretended to protect. Winter collapsed into her chair, sobbing. I just wanted to be loved. I looked at her, voice low, not bitter, just final. Step out of your mother's shadow, Winter. If you truly want love, stop stealing someone else's. At the back of the room, Lucia nodded. Everything had been recorded, legal, intact. I placed the mic down and stepped off the stage. Franklin called out, choking, Melissa, I can explain. I stopped, didn't turn. No need. The light already did. I walked out of the silent ballroom, each step echoing on marble floors. Every footfall a period ending 8 years of deception. The next morning, I woke up in my temporary apartment in Brookline to a phone vibrating nonstop. The news had spread across local media. A bold headline on the Boston Daily Chronicle read, Insurance agent Franklin Ward under investigation for alleged financial misconduct and conspiracy against Boston Vet Clinic. Within hours, his company issued a statement suspending him pending internal investigation. They cited potential conflicts of interest and ethical violations. I read it not with satisfaction, but with quiet closure, like a wound finally stitched shut. Winter's fate was different. The media descended on her like vultures. Leaked texts and videos of her entering the records room circulated online. She was dropped from 2 major PR contracts. One video showed her crying on Nathan's doorstep. But no one was listening anymore. The spotlight she had once craved now pinned her down with no escape. Lucia worked tirelessly for the next 48 hours. She filed a civil lawsuit with the Suffolk County Court, demanding compensation for reputational harm, emotional damage, and lost revenue at Pine Hill Veterinary Care. Every piece of evidence, USBS, videos, messages, was formally submitted. When I signed the case file, Lucia said, They can run from love, but not from the law. At the same time, something moved me far more. Mrs. Ellie, a 68-year-old client who once brought in her heartsick dog, Buddy, wrote an open letter to the Boston Herald. If Dr. Melissa had ever done wrong, I wouldn't still have Buddy beside me. She saved him and restored my faith in people. The letter spread faster than the scandal. Old clients returned, sending flowers and letters of support. Pine Hill's doors reopened after 2 weeks, its lights burning bright again. Every thank you card was a patch mending the trust that Franklin and Winter tried to tear apart. That afternoon, Franklin showed up outside my hotel. His shirt was wrinkled, dark circles under his eyes, clutching a bouquet of white roses. He stood in silence for a moment, then spoke with a trembling voice. "I've lost everything, Melissa. My job, my name, all of it. I know I deserve this. But please, forgive me. I don't want it to end like this." I looked at him for a long time. In that moment, I no longer saw the man who had hurt me, just a lost soul begging to be rescued. I answered, softly but firmly, "Franklin, I'm done healing anyone but myself." He froze, lips parting to say something more. But I quietly closed the door. No screams, no scenes, only silence. The silence of finality. The next day, I went to Lucha's office and signed the divorce papers. Ink seeped into the white page, slowly marking the end of 8 years together. When I finished, Lucia asked, "Any final words you'd like me to include?" I smiled. "No. I think he's heard enough." That afternoon, I returned to our old home. It was quiet, eerily tidy. I took down our wedding photo, packed it with a few keepsakes. When I locked the door, I didn't look back. Outside, autumn sunlight spilled gold across the sidewalk. I walked away, unburdened, like someone finally unchained. There was no triumphant victory, only the dignified stillness I had reclaimed after 8 long years of loss. 6 months had passed since that night at the Grand Ivy. Spring had come to Boston, and the trees lining Beacon Hill had begun to bud. I sat in the small office of Pine Hill Veterinary Care, watching sunlight stream through the windows, casting warm beams over the wall of photos, portraits of cats and dogs we'd saved. Life was strangely peaceful now, but beneath it, I knew the wheel of karma still turned, slowly and precisely. Franklin lost his job 3 months after the party. The internal investigation revealed he'd signed multiple invalid insurance contracts using client information for personal gain. The company issued a termination notice and demanded reimbursement for damages. Those who once called him a model man now avoided his gaze on the street. I heard he'd moved back in with his parents in Salem, hiding from the eyes of the world. A man who once believed he was above morality now had to bow before the very rules he used to dismiss. Winter, on the other hand, fell into a cycle she might never escape. She began dating a businessman in New York, 15 years her senior, married. The media speculated, then broke the story. He had betrayed her, too. Headlines called her the woman who always seeks love in the wrong place. I read it not with schadenfreude, but with sadness. Perhaps her wounds had never truly healed. And sometimes, you don't need to punish someone, because they've already done that to themselves. Nathan's path was different. He won the divorce case, gaining custody of his 6-year-old daughter, Amelie. One warm summer afternoon, he called me. His voice was calm and gentle. "Amelie's learning to draw. She said she wants to draw you, the woman who saved her dad from silence. Thank you, Melissa, for choosing truth over hate." I smiled, eyes stinging. "I didn't save you, Nathan. The truth saved both of us. As for me, I'm still here, in this small clinic nestled under tree-lined streets of Brookline. But Pine Hill Veterinary Care is no longer just a clinic. I've started a small weekend training program for vet students and volunteers called Ethics and Compassion in Veterinary Practice. I teach them not just how to save lives, but how to keep their hearts from growing numb in the face of ingratitude. I tell them, no one can truly hurt you if you're grateful for having seen their true face. After every class, I go to the backyard, where there stands a small statue of a Labrador named Max, the first animal I ever saved. Under it, I had inscribed, "Loyalty never betrays. Only humans forget." As I water the flowers around that statue, a quiet peace seeps in. I'm no longer the woman who was betrayed. I'm the woman who chose to walk away from the cycle of pain. Somewhere out there, Franklin and Winter are paying for what they did. But I don't think of them much anymore. I think of the morning light through my windows, the patter of small paws across the floors, and the relief of knowing this. I won, not through revenge, but through compassion and freedom. A year later, I sold part of my shares in Pine Hill Veterinary Care to found the Paw Hearts Foundation, a rescue fund for abandoned pets and underprivileged children who love animals. I wanted to spend the rest of my life healing, not just myself, but the fragile beings who needed a gentle hand. My first field mission took me to South America, to a small suburb of Venezuela. There, children lived in tin-roofed wooden homes, clutching skinny dogs like they were their whole world. I worked with a team of volunteers to set up a temporary animal shelter and teach the children how to care for their companions. One hot afternoon, while handing out disinfectants, I heard a faint sound from behind a pile of trash. A tiny, dust-covered kitten peeked out, trembling, with round gray eyes staring up at me. I picked it up, brushed off the grime, gently touched the wound on its paw. It nuzzled into my palm and let out a soft purr. I smiled, an abandoned soul, looking for something to believe in. In its eyes, I saw myself a year ago, wounded, cast aside, yet still believing in kindness. I named it Chance, for its second chance. That evening, during our volunteer team dinner, an American man named Michael Rivers, part of the medical group, handed me a small roadside bouquet. Nothing fancy, just wild daisies wrapped in brown paper. He smiled. "These were the first flowers to bloom after yesterday's storm. I thought you should have them." I accepted them with a quiet smile. Not a promise, not a beginning, just the peace of two strangers sharing a moment of light in a foreign land. One evening in Venezuela, as the electricity went out, I sat alone in a small wooden cabin, lit only by the flickering glow of a candle and the soft sound of rain falling on the tin roof outside. I opened the old wooden box I had brought from Boston. Inside was a letter I had written to myself on the very first night after leaving Franklin. The paper had yellowed, the folds worn and familiar, but the words remained sharp and unblurred. If someone says they'd rather kiss a dog than kiss you, thank them, because they just gave you your freedom. I read it again and smiled, not with the bitterness of past wounds, but with the quiet recognition of a woman who had come to understand. Freedom doesn't mean leaving someone, it means knowing when something no longer deserves a place in your life. I folded the letter gently and held it over the candle flame. The paper caught fire, its words curling, fading, dissolving into smoke that floated out through the open window. It wasn't an act of resentment, nor regret. It was simply a final farewell to the version of me that once stayed too long. When the flame went out, I looked up and saw Chance, the little gray kitten, curled peacefully at my feet, and I listened to the soft rhythm of the rain above. And in that quiet moment, I knew with absolute clarity, I had finally, truly healed. One early morning, I drove my old Jeep down a coastal road in Venezuela, the horizon glowing with the golden shimmer of sunrise spilling over the ocean. The wind tangled my hair as I drove, and beside me, Chance lay curled on the passenger seat, his soft eyes turned toward me in quiet trust. I turned on the radio, and a classic Fleetwood Mac song played, a melody that seemed made for those who had been broken, but had never let their hope die. In the calm, I spoke in voiceover, steady and serene. Betrayal didn't destroy me. It taught me who to trust, and when to let go. I pulled the Jeep to a stop by the beach, stepped out, and let my bare feet sink into the cool tide lapping at the shore. In front of me, the sun was descending into the sea. Not an ending, but a gentle, golden beginning of something freer. I lifted Chance into my arms, and he nestled into my chest, purring quietly into the sea breeze. That image, a woman holding a rescued soul under a setting sun, between the vast ocean and the open sky, became the final symbol of my journey. Kindness, unbroken by betrayal, still intact despite everything. The screen slowly darkened. The Paw Hearts Foundation logo appeared, followed by the words, "Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing peace over pain." The sound of waves continued in the background, merging with the soft closing melody. A gentle reminder that sometimes the most powerful revenge is to live with grace, to live with light, and to never let darkness reach your heart again. If this story touched you, please like, subscribe, and share it so that more women are reminded every pain can find its way to the light. Thank you for listening to Melissa's story, the woman who chose truth over hate and compassion over vengeance.